Hola clase, buenas noches. Voy a hacer este video como un repaso de la lección de los artículos definidos. So I'm going to do a little review video for those who may have missed it due to absence, tardiness, and somebody told me that he couldn't hear me at all today on Zoom. So I'm going to make this video so that you don't miss out on the lesson and fall behind. So here we go. We talked today about los artículos definidos, aka definite articles, and that's basically a fancy term for the word the, T-H-E, the. In English, we only have one way to say the, which is the, but in Spanish, there are 4 different ways. So we discussed this a little bit in previous classes. Okay, so when we learned our materias de la escuela, okay, el horario escolar, I told you that you might see an L or a la preceding your school subjects. So for example, you might have seen el inglés or el español. You may have seen la música, okay? So why are there different forms and why do I have them in different colors? The reason why is because in Spanish, because Spanish is a Romance language, they like to assign a gender to their nouns. Remember, a noun is a person, place, thing, or an idea. So anything that falls into the noun category is going to be either masculine and have an L in front of it, or feminine. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with actual, genders, like the sexes, like are you a girl or are you a boy? This has to do more with where Spanish evolved from. It evolved from 2 languages. So it evolved from ancient Greek, not the Greek that people in Greece speak right now, and Latin, which the Romans spoke. So the Roman Empire and the Greek Empire took over a lot of Western Europe, and for that reason, all of these languages were formed as an impression of their success in taking over a lot of land in Western Europe. So we have Spanish, okay, and French, Portuguese, Romanian, which is the one everyone forgets, and Italian. Those are the 5 Romance languages, and they have this whole gender assignment, okay? So I know that I said there are 4 definite articles that mean the, and that's because they also have plural forms of the. So we have L and la, and you would take L and you'd put it before words like sacapuntas or papel. So we're learning these school supplies, okay? Or reloj, the clock. This just simply means that it comes from Greek, linguistically from Greek roots. El lápiz and el libro are examples. So some of the feminine vocabulary terms we've learned, these would come from Latin. Anything feminine comes from Latin, like regla, la goma. They call it la goma de borrar, but you can still say goma and they would know that you're talking about an eraser. And la carpeta, for example. But whenever you have more than one of these items, there are plural forms of the. So L would turn into los if you had more than one. La would turn into las if you have more than one. That's how we get the 4 forms of the. El la, los las. Those are your 4 thes. So today we talked about making things plural, more than one. What if you have more than one pencil? What if you have more than one notebook or more than one folder? So there were 3 basic rules that we wrote down on the board today. So I'm going to review those with you. So let's take, for example, regla, ruler. So la regla is the ruler, okay, or ruler. And if I wanted to say rulers, first of all, this, you can't have this anymore. You need the plural form. So instead of la, you need las. Regla ends in a vowel. Anytime you have a vowel, this is rule 1, something that ends in a vowel, you just add s at the end to make it plural. So las reglas is how you'd say rulers. Okay. And this applies to anything that has a vowel at the end. So las gomas de borrar. Okay. Or you could have los libros. Again, ends in a vowel. Okay. Los libros. If it ends in a vowel, you just add s. Now, that's rule 1, but sometimes things don't end in vowels. Okay. There are nouns. There are plenty of nouns that do not. So you need to know what happens if your noun ends in a consonant, like reloj or papel. These end in a J and an L. So anytime you want to pluralize something that ends with a consonant, you can't just add s. It's not los relos. It's los relojes. You add an es. So that's rule number 2. Anything that ends in a consonant is pluralized with an es. So el reloj would turn into los relojes. And el papel would turn into los papeles. This es extends the sound of a noun by 1 more syllable. So we had el papel, 3 syllables. Now you add the es and it's los papeles, 4 syllables. It grows by a syllable when you add es. Papeles, relojes, okay? And then there's one special rule. Rule number 3 is very similar to a pluralization rule that you learned in the English language. So in the English language, what happens if you have a puppy and then your puppy needs a friend and you add another puppy? It's P-U-P-P, not Y-S. You change the Y to an I and add E-S. That's a pluralization. Puppy, puppies, library, libraries. Those are the 2 examples I can think of so far. I always give the same ones. But in Spanish, the rule is nouns that end in a Z have to change. So which vocabulary term did we learn the other day that ends with a Z? And I said this one several times because you need it to write with. It's el lápiz. So you cannot just add es, because then it would be los lápices, and we want to preserve that nice short and quick s sound. So you change the Z to a C and add es. So it would actually be Lápices. Lápices. Okay. Los lápices. There's the complete answer. Okay. Those are the 3 rules that we went over today. So just to review again, if it ends in a vowel, just add S. If it ends in a consonant, you have to add ES. And the word grows by 1 syllable in sound. It makes it longer. And then if it ends in a Z, change the Z to a C and add ES. Now there's one other rule, and I kind of just want you to know it, but I didn't really make a big lesson out of this one. Sometimes in the Spanish language, there are things that just end in an S, okay? And those things that end in S, they're kind of already pluralized. So for example, las tijeras are scissors, whether you're talking about 1 pair of las tijeras or 10 pairs of las tijeras. This is already pluralized. So you don't have to put an ES at the end and have las tijeras es. That's too long. So this is already pluralized. If it ends in an S, then don't pluralize. It's already there. There's another example of that, and that would be el sacapuntas. So this is a pencil sharpener, but if I had more than 1 pencil sharpener in my room, which I do, I have the one on the wall that came with the school, and then I have the a little handheld one. All you'd have to do to make the distinction between one of these and more than one is just change the L to los sacapuntas. Anything that ends in an S, that's the form. There's no like plural and singular form. It's the same. Okay, so those are your pluralization rules. I hope that clarifies today's lesson. And when you go into Google Classroom to complete your work on your own tomorrow, I will give you a reminder of which lessons you should be working on, which exercises. So número 45, 45, and número 48, 48, those both have to do with this lesson on pluralization and masculine versus feminine. I believe that a student had asked me the other day, or it was today during class, if there's any way to know whether a noun is going to be masculine or feminine just by looking at it. And that is a long and complicated linguistic lesson. So I'm going to simplify. I'm going to oversimplify this to you. One of the best rules to know as a beginner in Spanish learning is that if it ends in an A, it's probably feminine 99.9% of the time. Are there words like exceptions to the rule that end in A that are masculine? Sure. A good example of that would be el mapa, map. It's not la mapa, it's el mapa, but 99.9% of the time, if it ends in an A, it's feminine. And then to counter that, if something ends in an O, 99.9% of the time, you can be sure that it is masculine. And a good way to remember this rule is when we talked about our personality traits. We talked about short versus tall. Short, bajo versus baja. Okay, so you take the adjective to describe yourself as short. I would say